Okay, hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to discuss the goal of providing for your analytical writing more activity, more purpose, more implication, uh, ultimately to develop a good personal voice in your analytical writing and to decrease the amount of observational and passive writing that young writers tend to be stuck in. Okay? And I'll show you some examples of my doing this lesson in class with some of my students so that you'll have plenty of examples to work from. I think I won't play this video in the midst of my video here, but I strongly encourage you I use this in the classroom, go to YouTube and watch this video. It's only about 4 minutes long. It's called Totally Like Whatever. And this person's name is Taylor Molly. It's funny and entertaining, but he gets across the point that more and more it seems people are unwilling to use language that shows that they're committed to their ideas. And I see the same in writing. And so that's why I use this video um, to point out this concern. Okay. So go watch this video when you get a chance. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulty. All right, but that video is great, and Taylor Molly, he is a professional performing poet, but he's a former middle school social studies teacher, as I recall. Okay, so he really understands what writing instruction and speaking instruction, how they're connected to one another. He uses these words or these lines in that piece. I implore you, I entreat you, I challenge you. So he exemplifies what he's trying to get across, speaking actively. These verbs here are good, strong verbs, partially because they are transitive verbs, and transitive verbs create action and perform action upon an object. Okay, in this case, the object is the word you. Okay. And so he exemplifies his point in the very lines that he uses. Okay, here are some sentences that I took from a previous year's set of essays. My senior students were writing. We did a unit on cities and the role of cities in humanity, and how the urban atmosphere has become the natural atmosphere for human beings now. Okay, because the dystopian stories almost invariably take place in urban settings. But look at these sentences here and see the language that I've highlighted. Perhaps one of the main things that distinguishes a city is and then the distinguishing characteristic. Although there are many positive attributes a city can provide, it can take and then the negative impact upon humanity, whatever that is. And then cities are able to cause humans to be more, and then whatever negative human characteristic. Okay? Look at this language in blue here, perhaps, and then can provide and can take. This kind of language demonstrates a lack of commitment to one's ideas. Okay? The word can here, this is a specific type of helping verb called a modal. We have several of them: can, may, must, would, could, should, might. I think I'm missing a couple, but there's a wishy-washiness to it, okay? An inactivity to the use of verb there, an unwillingness to commit to the ideas. And even look at this word perhaps. Perhaps, maybe, like you don't have to believe what I'm thinking here, We want to write a lot more confidently. And then look at this vague language here. One of the main things. I mean, these are words that really have almost no real meaning. Okay, and so they just add space to our sentences, but don't add meaning to our sentences. And so these are ways in which your writing will become less economic and less clear. And then here's another thing: cities are able to cause humans to be more. Okay, so the use of verbs in the infinitive form, not illegal. There's nothing grammatically wrong with this sentence. But the more you're using verbs in the infinitive form, the less active your writing is. And again, we see the to be verb right here and right here. Okay, I'll show you more examples. But what I told my students last year when I pulled these sentences out, these essays are going to lack specificity and commitment. Okay, so I obviously gave them this stuff while they were writing rough drafts. Sorry about my. Okay, so here's a better example about in that cities essay. All right, cities warp our, and then whatever the human quality is, taking up the entirety of it. They swallow up that human quality, and we forget about life outside the cities. So now we have, just grammatically, the sentence is written very actively. Okay, transitive verb performing action upon an object. Transitive verb performing action upon an object. Okay, and even better, these words they have good sound. Warp. It just has good sound. Okay, and it's visual. Warp. We can see visual. Swallow up. This is giving cities a human quality. So there's personification. There's metaphor in this analytical writing, and that's okay to use. Use some metaphor sometimes. Okay, and then there's implication. Okay, it would almost be good enough just to put the period right here, but then we get implication even more. So now there's a lot to work around in this sentence, a lot to build from. I can see that this essay has a confident tone, but also unique ideas. Okay, and it starts with good verbs and active grammar. Okay, here the next two slides are examples of how the to be verb just isn't very helpful if it's used frequently in our writing. It's tough to write without the to be verb entirely, but when using it this frequently, it's problematic. Okay, so listen to this. The novel Brave New World by Aldous Huxley shows us what a utopia could be. Though what we must do is define what a utopia is. To me, a utopia is a society in which all the problems that we are currently facing are eliminated, and a world where people are living happily without worry or any dark feelings. The sad reality is that most utopias are not what they seem. Behind that beautiful, majestic facade is a darker side and reality of utopias, one of despair and savagery. The whole foundation of our society is based on the conditioning processes of the inhabitants at production. There's no implication. It's just observational. Okay? They're just declaring something to be. Okay? So there's not a lot to go from with that kind of writing. All right? Same thing in this paragraph here from a different essay. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World is a science fiction novel about a dystopian society called the world state, where individuals are raised from embryos and are genetically modified around the guidelines of science and efficiency. Emotions and individuality are conditioned out of the children at a very young age, and reward systems are made using the drug called soma, a drug used by citizens to feel happier. Very, very passive. Okay, no implication. Okay, I bet these sentences could be rewritten so that raises is the verb and modifies, or modify and condition. Okay, so even just taking those verbs, you could rewrite the sentences in this paragraph and make them more active and be a little bit better. Okay, so we want to watch out for the use of the to be verb. It's not illegal. You have to use it in some cases. Okay, there's nothing grammatically wrong with this stuff, but it doesn't mean it's good writing just because it's not grammatically incorrect. Okay, so here's a sentence that might turn up in the Dystopia short stories essay. And I took this from a previous year's student's essay. Okay. What interests me most about Vonnegut's writing is the characterization, especially for his short stories. He often seemed to deliberately choose a dull plot but pump it with rich characterization. Notice the repetition in the sentence, the way it's arranged. The writer has to use characterization twice. Notice the use of the present tense to be verb here, and then the past tense on another vague verb right here, seemed. Okay, but and also it's 30 words, and technically, grammatically, it's two sentences, not one. It's two independent clauses that are improperly joined here. There's just too much here to swallow, and not a lot of specificity. But there's some good stuff to build from. I like this idea that the writer thinks the plot of Vonnegut's stories is dull. I like the use of the verb pump here and rich characterization. I see some ideas to build from. So I just took this person's two independent clauses, 30 words, and I wrote a sentence that goes like this. Vonnegut pumps the dull plots of his short stories with rich characterization. 12 words and one independent clause, no run-on, and the person's interest is implied in this, okay, especially with the rich characterization and dull plots. And now pumps becomes a very active verb here, okay? Vonnegut pumps the dull plots of his short stories with rich characterization. Action here being performed on this object right here. It's a much more economic sentence, and it's much more purposeful. The vague language is removed. Okay, this is exactly what Taylor Molly talks about in his video. Okay, so I had my senior class take that sentence and use it as a model. They needed to create a sentence that is grammatically active, as we've just talked about, uses an original, even in some cases a metaphorical verb, that a transitive verb that visits action upon an object, okay, and that it has implication. But what I did in this situation is I didn't want them to feel the pressure of coming up with something that was necessarily true. I wanted them actually to focus on the grammar of this sentence without worrying about meaning, okay? So I asked them to be ridiculous and nonsensical in their writing here. Okay, don't worry about what it actually communicates about dystopian literature. Just have fun with it and check off these boxes up here. Okay, so I gave them some prompts, and some sentence starters here. What do dystopian stories do, and for what purpose? What do writers of dystopias do, and for what purpose? Or what does a particular writing technique add to the stories or the dystopian genre? Okay, so they didn't have to use these sentence starters. Most of them did. Okay, but I gave them the sort of format here: dystopias, then a transitive verb, and thus the object receiving the action of that verb, and then more information that finishes off the implication. Or writers of dystopias, and then same thing: transitive verb, object, implication. Or writing technique or style: transitive verb, object, implication. All right, and so I had it's a pretty big class. I broke them up into 7 groups, and here are the sentences that they came up with. I don't know how that feature just developed within my slide deck, because I didn't deliberately do that, but oh well. So just reading a few of these aloud. Dystopias finesse stupid young people into joining cults. I thought that was hilarious because it implicates my class. Writers of dystopias defenestrate local armadillo populations when suffering from writer's block. And all the students went nuts. What does defenestrate mean? And it means to throw out of a window. So a great image here. Dystopias defenestrate local armadillo populations when suffering from writer's block. Hilarious. They met the goal of trying to be funny here, okay, and being nonsensical. Dystopias defeat the purpose of literature as beady-eyed Ians who tear in a narrative like sharks into bone lead even the most purposeful of plots astray. Okay, so Ian is a student in that class, so someone took a shot at him. Authors of dystopias push similes and humanoid snake platoons on their readers in order to convey the aesthetic of a doomsday scenario. And this one gets particularly ridiculous. Like a 17th century Caribbean pirate with scurvy, I like how it starts off with an extended metaphor. Dystopias cannot purge their intestines and arteries of fatty, sticky, empty calories reminiscent of human rights violations, reject the quintessential citrus and vegetables of society, such as a functioning democracy, then delude themselves by drowning in oceans of propaganda that smell of rum. Okay, and so on. All right, so they definitely took it and ran with it. But the bottom line is what they did together here was practice writing a much more active sentence, okay, with a good active transitive verb, which requires an object, which leads them to implication. And so then I asked them to go to their essays and now do the same thing, but not with the ridiculous nature, but actually write something that may turn up in their essays. Okay, so I gave them a few minutes to do this, and these just a few of what they came up with. All right, I have like 28 students in this class, so there were actually with that many sentences, but I just pulled out a few. Writers of dystopias tear our morality apart by giving the characters limited options to incite a reaction from the reader. Pretty good. Writers of dystopias paint vivid yet distorted landscapes, serving as portals to the injustice and controversy in the tangible reality. The dystopian genre confronts our notions of society by illustrating a plausible society with undesirable characteristics at the forefront of their descriptions in order to contrast them to what our society has or could be. I think that sentence could be more economically written. They probably tried to squeeze too much into it, but they're still doing what they need to do. Dystopian genre confronts our notions of society, okay? So active structure. Within the genre of dystopias, the trope of punishment monopolizes stories because without excessive pain, a dystopia is simply a society. I like the implication at the end of the sentence. Great verb right here. Okay, notice that all these sentences are in the present tense. Okay, dystopias encapsulate the unjust suffering in societies as rational or irrational, while readers query, another good use of verb, the morality of these actions. And then dystopias criticize current social problems through the creations of alternate environments that pulls these issues to extremes. So some of these sentences still need a little bit of work, but much more active. Okay, there's a lot more to say after these sentences because of the way in which they're written. So we had some success there. And what I'm hoping we'll continue doing is using these kinds of sentences in what I like to call our purpose statements. Our purpose statements are like a thesis for an essay or the what people typically call topic sentences. I'm not a fan of that term, but whatever. Okay, the opening sentences to some paragraphs, or these may occur in analysis or even at the ends of paragraphs, okay, or in a conclusion. All right, lots of different places where they could occur. And I think that they force more good writing, okay? Good writing engenders more good writing, whereas poorly structured sentences or too much use of passive voice actually limits writing, ironically, in the midst of ballooned out sentences that have a lot of vague language. Okay, so this writing is more economic, but forces more good thinking and good writing, I think, behind it. Okay, so I encourage everybody to give these a shot, and I've shared this slide deck on our Google Classroom. Thank you very much.